All right, finally, I'm using a different type of app to go live here today. I'm using StreamYard. I've used it plenty in the past, but it can be a little bit confusing to say the least. You know, if you would have said just 20 years ago that we would be using apps like StreamYard to go live on YouTube, people would have called you cuckoo. I say, well, it's a slim possibility, but why wouldn't YouTube just offer it as part of their service? Which they also do. It's not as good, and it's done that way intentionally so that you will pay to go live by using their app. So it makes sense that it would be done this way. Same thing with cars. They make cars to where they're not going to last, but maybe you get a good 8 years in, you start having to change out everything around the engine. Probably need to get a good rebuild within the 10-year mark, and so on. You got to take good care of a motor for it to last these days, simply because of the way they're made. If you were to make one at your house, say the entire block, right down to the measurements, and be a lot more in detail with the measurements, of course the engine is going to last a lot longer, especially if you use better metals, which can easily be done. Um, Same thing with tires. They don't want you to have tires that's going to last for a million miles. They do have tires that can last a million miles, but you're never going to see them. They used to have a tire about, I'd say, well, even 20 years ago again, that used to they would go at least 300,000 miles, and it was guaranteed to go 300,000 miles. They went out of business because their tires were too good. People were buying the other kind of tires, and those tires last a fraction of the time. And well, the people that bought their tires simply did not need to buy tires anytime soon. So it makes sense again. Um, I find it highly intriguing that people of today talk about Bigfoot, and yet they have no idea about the origins of Bigfoot, or even if it really exists. It's called a myth. They say, well, no body has ever been established. And if no body's ever been found, well, then it's not proven. It has to be a myth. this is not entirely true, that no body or physical evidence has ever been found. Now, of course, you would expect me to go off into the big footprints, which, well, anybody could lay down false footprints. But what about the hair? They have found hair follicles on trees where these Bigfoot have been sighted, and the DNA does show it to be an ape. In fact, the DNA matches up with hair follicles found in Siberia. Now, if we know this, then Bigfoot's nothing but an ape. But there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. And I'm going to show you a few things that might just very well open your eyes. And here we go. Rock ape is the name given to creatures allegedly spotted by multiple American soldiers during the Vietnam War. However, even prior to the war, stories floated around about these jungle people. These jungle people were bipedal and ape-like, standing about 6 feet tall. They were stoutly built and very muscular, but had protruding stomachs, meaning they had big stomachs. This is true. There was a Vietnam battle that took place between at least 100 of these rock-throwing apes and our troops in the Vietnam War. The first and most popular battle given to would be the 7 soldiers that first encountered these ape-like creatures. One soldier was dragged off in the middle of the night and killed. However, they attributed that off to a tiger, which is highly unlikely because somebody would have heard the tiger. Tigers are not a quiet animal, especially when hunting. They're just not. They're not one of those type of creatures that's going to quietly sneak into your camp, drag one of you off, and then eat you. You would be highly mistaken in making that assumption. Other animals are very quiet and stealthy in their hunting, in particular lions. However, there are no lions in Vietnam during that time, especially at any size that would have created any kind of problem. Vietnam is ruled by tigers, especially at that time. Here we see rock apes. It is a video this guy put out. And in Vietnam, they're referred to as the Batutut or Ujit or Nagraung. However the hell you say that. Simply put, translated, they were referred to as village people or jungle people. I mean, not village people, my mistake. The jungle people. Locals in Vietnam were said to have walked past these creatures on a regular basis and even handing them food. Now, these GIs, after their Vietnam experience, described this humanoid shaped Sasquatch, if you will. They've been seen in many countries, they've been given many names. However, there's a good explanation as to why they become such a legend and not hardly seen. Well, they are seen, just like the chupacabra down here in Texas. I live right here on the Mexican-American border, and I can tell you they do exist. People do see them on a regular basis. They've even been caught in a video by a sheriff while answering a call late at night to go check on a certain particular house. As he followed one down the dirt road, and well, there was Chupacabra running right in front of him. Yet still today, even with absolute undeniable proof, people call it myth. They're referred to as cryptids. Cryptid is pretty much anything that resembles an ape is called a cryptid. Our ancestors are referred to as cryptids, believe it or not. There are a lot of different kind of monkeys in the world. And here it even tells you point blank. There are creatures similar to Sasquatch virtually everywhere except Hawaii. Although it's worth mentioning, they have many which are basically similar Sasquatch. They are creatures of the wild. There's no doubt about that. So I can show you a lot of things on here, but I'm going to really enlighten your story here a little bit as we go. So stick around. You're going to like this one, I think. The Vietnam rock apes, myth, fact, and everything in between. Now, when the soldiers described this humanoid-like creature, I don't think this is an actual photo of one, though it could be. Very well it could be if you look at the hands. If it's not a costume, the hand is real, then you can assume this is an ape-like creature. Alfonso Villarreal, nicknamed Pancho, served in the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines in the Vietnam War. Like anyone else who was sent over, Alfonso went through hell and back fighting the humanoid jungles of South Asia. Now, perhaps I should have laid down this link for you, but it's easy to Google and find. These are classified, and I'm talking about the Bigfoot in particular, what we're referring to right now as the rock ape. This was the original American name given to these apes, the Vietnam rock apes, because they throw rocks. They're classified under the category of cryptids. See right there, cryptids. Don't know how that just happened, but let me try this again. Where do we go? Where do we go? Here we are. Here's another reference given to it under the same link. It's called the Batutu, if you will. Simply put, they're simply called and referred to as jungle people. by the Vietnamese themselves. What I find highly interesting in the Vietnamese stories is that there was more than one battle with these apes. There's even a battle where our troops killed over 100 of these beasts in a battle, in a single battle alone. One platoon or a company, I believe, but a smaller unit was involved in being attacked by these jungle people. Well, the reason why is because if you move into their territory, they're going to throw rocks at you. They're known for this. Your best defense is to leave the area. And of course, they got their name from throwing rocks. It also tells you that here. Muscular frame, long limbs and protruding limbs. They have dark eyes, but they're also described as red eyes. They have a very odd shaped head, 4 to 5 inch fangs. They even have a tail attached to their backside. Of course, their height has always been something to question. Some people see them 4 to 5 feet. Some people see them 12 feet high. Some in Russia claim they could be as tall as 14 feet tall. So, of course, they're going to vary in size. This makes absolute sense. The ones in Vietnam are said to be as high as 9 feet tall, possibly taller. Now, the Marines in Vietnam described these apes as upon close contact, the apes didn't demonstrate any fear. They didn't scurry off like mice or cockroaches. If they were capable of it, soldiers or villagers even got a sneaky wake up call by the stealth intrusion of a rock ape into the personal space, taking a seat right next to them. Reasons given for this brazen fearlessness approximated to their large size, giving them a physical advantage over humans in the remote environment they lived in, leaving them immune to the intrusion of foreign travelers. So, upon first contact with humans, of course, an ape has no fear of that human, doesn't see them as a threat, not physically. Um, what's really funny is back in the Vietnam War, a lot of soldiers were smoking marijuana, and LSD was quite prevalent as well. However, let me point this out to you. Soldiers smoke marijuana. Marijuana does not cause hallucinogens. It's not an hallucinogenic. It's not something that's going to make you see things that aren't there. LSD, on the other hand, was said to be given out by our own government to the troops in order to make them more aggressive. LSD has never been known to cause people to see things that were not there. It can cause you to get quite disoriented. This is a really long report here, but it talks a lot about Bigfoot, a lot about the rock throwing creatures of Vietnam and how they were described. Now, here he kind of looks like a gorilla. Gorillas are not as smart as apes, so I would have a hard time with this unless somehow a gorilla intercrossed with an ape or a large ape bipedal had crossbred with another ape, creating this offshoot of a species. It's very likely and it's very possible. Yeah, leave it to me for my PC to freeze up with so many tabs pulled up. It's just going to be slow. Just going to have to deal with it. There we go. That one tab was causing me a lot of problems. Now, here's another rendering of what Sasquatch is said to look like in Vietnam. These are the creatures that our military engaged in their jungles. See the rock in his hand, the one here depicted right towards the center facing us. There's a big rock in his hand. Well, that makes sense. They use rocks as weapons. Some chimpanzees have been known to sharpen rocks and use them against glass. Other monkeys have been known to use different various tools for different things. Here it talks about the crazy description of these humanoids, these jungle people. And here the Marines describe them as roughly at least 6 foot tall, very muscular, with protruding stomachs and covered in hair ranging from brown to black in color. Actually, the brown is more of a reddish brown color overall, and sometimes it's seen as darker. It's probably the difference in a lot of colored eagles. If you see them in the dark, they probably look more dark. If you see them in the light, they probably appear more reddish than anything. American soldiers of Vietnam right here is depicted. Mosquito clouded jungles of Vietnam. There were many accounts in Vietnam of our soldiers encountering these creatures. I find that highly amazing, in particular the 101st Airborne Division. Here's one where a 6-man unit from the 101st Airborne Division who were taking a break after a relentless hike through the unforgiving mountainous jungle terrain, carrying heavy packs. Even as they rested, they were attuned to the surrounding environment. Basically, one of them got drug off and was killed. They brought that person's body back for retrieval, and then went on with their business there in Vietnam. Here is another depicted drawing of what appears to possibly be a female rendition of the creature. You should keep this in mind. Now, the Belai ape is the largest chimpanzee ever known to mankind. It's not really known as a rock throwing ape, nor is it known as a ape that is humanoid like in structure. This would be a misstatement here. The humans are members of the great ape or humanoid family. We are not. We do not have that type of DNA. If we were related to the great ape, we would be able to breed with apes, but we cannot because our DNA is completely different. The Belai apes are said to be 6 feet tall. That's quite a big chimpanzee. It's humongous, especially given its strength. Here they finally talk about the DNA, but only in it being related to other apes in Central Africa. They are a remote ape. They are quite large. And they do exist. Yet, there's never been any remains of this ape ever retrieved as physical evidence. The only physical evidence they have is direct human contact. Isn't that interesting? Because no physical evidence outside of hair follicles and footprints and visual sighting of these great apes, the Bigfoot, has ever been seen or known. Here it tells you these apes they get up to about 6 foot tall. The Belai ape. So it's not impossible for there to be an ape that is at least 6 foot tall. The problem is this is not Bigfoot. It's not even close in description. And we do know for a fact these are chimps. There's hardly any similarity between the two apes. I only pulled that up to point out to you that there are great apes that do exist. Same tab I had up earlier, isn't it? Let's keep going. Now, here is what was called the Gigantopithecus, or the Gigantopithecus blacki. The giant ape that is now extinct. I find it ironic that humans believe a lot of things to be extinct that are nowadays being proven not to be extinct. There are a lot of such creatures, especially in the ocean in particular, that are found not to be extinct, that scientists believe were once extinct. The Gigantopithecus obviously pretty much most likely is extinct. However, I would put it past you to say this: they had big feet. They had big jaws. Look at that jaw. I'll say the Gigantopithecus may be an ancestor of Bigfoot. It's very likely and very possible. They also dwelled in caves, much like our Bigfoot is claimed to exist in the Samoan caves, in the mountainous caves of Russia. Now, here you can go to a lot of places to look at the descriptions of Sasquatch or the rock ape. Get a lot of links to go look at. Here's one of the names given to the Yeti, the rock people, a tutu. I don't know how to properly say that, so I'm going to speak it best I can. The Batutut or Ujit, sometimes also known as the forest people or wild man, and there's another Vietnamese name given to it right there. They pull wrong. It's a humanoid cryptid, reportedly similar to Bigfoot throughout the habitat of Vui Quang Nature Reserve and other wilderness areas of Vietnam, Laos, and northern Borneo. There's a rendering of what they believe the creature to be described as looking like. Look at that face. Kind of reminds you of that first picture I showed you earlier, right? Mean looking face. Also, you might take note that just like Bigfoot in the Americas, upon observing the tracks left by this creature in 1970, led this researcher, Dr. John McKinnon, to believe that it was a humanoid similar to the Meganthropus that lived there instead. Cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman believes that the Batuut are a surviving population of the Homo erectus or Neanderthal. So they are said to be very humanoid-like. Well, the chupacabra is said to be a dog, but it is not. It belongs to the rat family. Completely different family of creature. Looks a lot like a dog or maybe even a wild cat, but it is not. In Vietnam, it's not a question of whether these creatures exist or not. They refer to the creature as forest man. Even though nobody's ever reported being able to talk to one of these creatures because they apparently are an ape, not capable of speech. Not on our level, anyhow. This particular ape is reported being about 5 feet tall and having reddish tinge to its fur. See, a reddish tinge look. Looks brown, looks black. Perfect description. Even back then, Hong Min Thio requested an expedition to find evidence of the creature, but it was unsuccessful. He never got funding to run his expedition. Now, one of the fifth season sci-fi paranormal reality series called Destination Truth, Josh Gates and his team searched for Batuut in Vietnam. They found several human-like footprints. Make a casting of their own, Key Bang National Park, which taken back to U.S. and later examined by noted Bigfoot research anthropologist Jeffrey Meldrum, and he said that the print, a significant discovery and one of the best pieces of evidence he has seen, was the footprint of these creatures that they know for a fact exist in Vietnam. So we know that the creatures do exist. There's even evidence to include skulls, hand bones, hair, and footprints, as well as visual sightings on a regular basis. To think that these creatures do not exist is one of the greatest fabricated imaginations of the human race. Here's another drawing of the ape here. This is the creature of Vietnam. And you also see a soldier right there to the right. And you're looking at what appears to be two of these apes. One very prevalent in the drawing here. And this, of course, goes into this guy who predicted the Vietnam attack. I mean, the Pearl Harbor attack and so on and so on. This guy really was attributed as one of the biggest scholars of his time. Here's a Marine soldier here, Vietnam. Tells all about his life and his life stories. One thing interesting about this guy is he was one of the Marines, Tim Delaney, who encountered Sasquatch in Vietnam. To see a large photo, click an image. Okay, well, there is what you call a rock ape, but not from Vietnam, from a different location. And let me tell you, this is not Bigfoot. He does have reddish eyes in the center, but not really the description of eyes that we're talking about. And of course, this thing is no more than a tiny little monkey that acts like a monkey. This is not a monkey that stands upright or by any means can be described as Bigfoot. He does live in the rocky areas, say a Rocky Mountain or something to that effect. So you can get confused when you're looking at something like that if you're not using your head. Here are some photos that were taken, believe it or not, in Vietnam that did not come out proper. These are the cast that they had gotten from this creature that they say was Bigfoot. These are some of the casts that they had gotten. Imagine that. Wow. In search of monsters. Boogie, woogie, boogie. Now, of course, here, this is a good photo here because you see a gorilla up top. But what do you see right down here? Called a humanzee picture. This chimpanzee type of ape is also said to reach heights of 6 feet or taller. This is an ape that has been said to use rocks. Of course, here it's being depicted as not very hairy up top, and it doesn't really resemble that of Bigfoot. However, it is said to walk like a Bigfoot. Could he be a cousin or related to the Sasquatch? It's very, very possible. This is a Russian ape. It's found in Russia. Russia, in that first picture I showed you earlier with the female ape, very important. Back when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, there was a bunch of skiers that went camping up in the Siberian mountains, and the entire team was slaughtered by what they believe were mountain apes. They have hair follicles and DNA to prove what the animal was. It's an ape. But the hair follicles they got were from tree branches that were standing at least 6 feet in the air. These creatures in Russia are said to get as tall as 12 feet tall. This gives you a full account of these people in their travels to Russia, these group of teenagers who wanted to go skiing. Well, to go skiing, you gotta walk up the mountain. Four bodies of this expedition remained missing. This guy at Mansi Hunter and his dog came across the remains of a makeshift snow den in the woods, about 250 feet from the cedar tree. A floor of branches laid in a deep hole in the snow. Pieces of tattered clothing were found strewn about. So basically, whatever clothes they were wearing were ripped off of them somehow, and they found these ripped clothing articles laying around this makeshift snow cave that was made. Most likely made by the humanoids that were hiding from whatever attacked their tents, and probably got found nonetheless and were still killed. Irregardless, we do know that the whole expedition was killed. This is one of the greatest mysteries of Russia of our time. The Russians touted it off as the guilty party being the rock throwing apes of Russia. However, not right away. Now, here the apes are seen down around the Indonesian islands, India, places like that. In the Indonesian islands, the apes are said to only reach heights of 4 to 5 feet. Southeast Asia. The great apes, or the orangutan habitat. And you can see there how it is depicted on the map. You run into the Gigantopithecus theory again. Well, Gigantopithecus lived about 11,700 years ago in southern China. It's said to be a sister genus of the Pongo, the genus that contains living orangutans in the subfamily Ponginae of the family Hominidid family. However the hell you say that name. Hominidid? Okay, I'll go with that. Basically, if you read through this, the DNA of 1.9 million year old fossil tooth confirm that the Gigantopithecus and Bongo once shared common ancestry, and that the genera diverged from one another between 10 million and 12 million years ago. So they believe that the two families split off. Humans did not come from this ape or anything like it. That's something they throw in because it's an atheist ideology of where the human race comes from. Basically, they're idiots. So if these apes ran off into two families and they are of orangutan origin, then why could the ape not breed with other apes? Of course it can. It has the same type of DNA, unlike humans, which cannot crossbreed with apes, proving that we are not descended from apes. Gigantus was roughly the same height as a modern gorilla, about 5.5 feet tall. Weighed about 331 pounds. Now, could you imagine a 10-foot creature this big, weighing over 600, maybe 700 pounds? He could easily be mistaken as a creature that weighed about 800 pounds, which some people in America have described Bigfoot as being that big. Now, we know that the Gigantopithecus is extinct, at least we believe it is. In the meanwhile, we got this ape right here. The mean looking face, rigid head, big hands, big feet, referred to as the Yeti, Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, many other names like the Abominable Snowman. Said to also roam around the central parts of Africa. And here you see the same name referred to these rock apes, Ptyodactyls, as they are called in Vietnam, are now here near the well-known Abdo-mentioned cryptids. Sightings of these mysterious creatures by American troops in the jungles of Vietnam throughout the course of the war were surprisingly numerous, with many witnesses giving extremely detailed accounts of the sightings. Our troops did have to battle these creatures. One particular hill in Vietnam was the site of so many rock ape sightings that it became known as Monkey Mountain. While no corpse of these strange creatures were ever recovered. Now, we know firsthand, like a lot of reports about these apes, not just by Vietnamese locals, but by our own military personnel, Marines in particular. These apes do exist in Vietnam. They do throw rocks, and they are quite large. However, just like the current Bigfoot, no corpse has ever been recovered. Now, you're probably thinking, well, surely they got bones, or do they? I want to bring you off in a different theory. What if this is a creature that has no bones outside of maybe its teeth, maybe its jaw, maybe? There are creatures that exist that do not have a lot of bone, if any bone, in their body, yet are said to be enormously strong. What if the ape had cartilage instead of bone? What if its bone was more cartilage-like, or very, very soft? Well, if left out in the open, a good rain would pretty much wash it away over time. You would never have a body that could be recovered. How did they get the Gigantopithecus jaw? Well, it's probably frozen and then fossilized, would be an educated guess. Marines, Vietnam, sighted right here in a bomb crater looking for Viet Cong snipers. I'd about to say the idiots standing up are going to be the first ones shot. What do you think? Most of what the troops in Vietnam reported about the rock apes doesn't really match typical orangutan behavior because they're not orangutans. While orangutans are sometimes social animals, they spend far more time foraging alone. Rudolf Hess really did die at Spandau. This is from DNA test. Well, yeah, okay, it gets thrown on. You see here a lot about different apes in Vietnam, such as right here. Misidentifying Sasquatch is what this should be labeled. The white-cheeked gibbon, which is an ape, it's from the orangutan family. The other family tree that goes also down to the Gigantopithecus, which could be an offshoot or an ancestor of Bigfoot, meaning the creature never went extinct, simply evolved. Probably through crossbreeding. The gibbons, of course, are much smaller, as points out here, than the 6-foot, heavily built rock apes, with male white-cheeked gibbons weighing an average of 20 pounds. Big difference in size. Big, huge difference in size. However, sightings of rock apes by Viet Cong and NVA troops were also common enough that the NVA General Hong Min Thai organized an expedition in 1974 to try to capture or at least kill one of these legendary creatures. The expedition was unsuccessful, though, and no hard evidence of the existence of these rock apes were found. This is in 1974. Another expedition organized by Professor Voi Khoi of the Vietnam National University was similarly unsuccessful. However, strange human-like, but not human, footprints were found in the jungle in 1970 by Professor Tran Hong Viet of Hanoi's how do you say that? Pedagogic University. He made cast of the footprints and found no further evidence of the rock ape's existence. Alara gibbon sitting on a stump over water here is seen, probably crawled down from the tree stump next to it. These are not very big apes, guys. These are small apes in comparison. These are not the rock apes that we're looking for or that has been described. Here's some troops right here. These troops reported seeing these ape-like creatures at a distance. Also reported that they had a lack of fear of humans. An explanation put forth by skeptics to explain away the rock ape phenomena is that these creatures were people were hallucinating and conjuring up these creatures in their own mind. It's funny that you go from one group of Marines that don't know the other to people from Vietnam who don't know any of us giving the same exact description of this rock ape. And of course, here they touted off as marijuana, probably marijuana or LSD or a combination. Really? So we just hallucinated the Vietnam War? It never happened? Okay. These are your common deniers of the world. Now, I want to show you on this map the area being depicted in the seeing of these apes. These apes are seen throughout the 70s, in particular Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, and Hanoi in northern Vietnam here. They've also been noted as being seen throughout China, throughout the mountainous regions, as you can plainly see right here and follow these mountainous territories up to this wooded area in the Shanghai province, where guess what? These creatures have been sighted. So we have sightings as time goes by, especially since the Vietnam War. Makes sense they'd want to get the hell out of an area where a bunch of people are killing them off, all the way up into the mountainous regions of Russia. In particular, down here, where a group of expeditionists were once killed. To be solid about it, it was a group of 20 people, 10 of which bodies were never recovered. How hard is it to believe that these apes of Russia did not cross over into Alaska? Just 30 years ago, even, the ocean was still completely freezing, and from time to time they do it again. From the ocean between Russia and Alaska, you can actually see Russia from Alaska with your human eyes. I submit that these creatures do exist, that they're nothing but an ape, and that they simply followed the mountains quite naturally all the way down into the Americas. And guess what? You can keep following. These creatures have been spotted down in South America, especially in the 80s and 90s, in Brazil in particular. People are not hallucinating when they're telling you they're seeing these creatures. They simply do exist. Now, there's all the names given to this creature over here to the right. In particular, they believe that the origin of this creature is Tibet in the Himalayas, not Vietnam, as I originally thought that the creatures are from, because that is where our troops first encountered them, uh, acting in the form of a military attacking our troops with rocks. Over 100 of these creatures were said to have been killed by our military. So if that's the case, they do exist, but the origins is of Tibet. I would like to know how they figured that out. I believe they are going from descriptions throughout time of tribes of people from the Tibet area that described their interactions with this ape-like creature we know as Bigfoot. Because that's what you're reading right here. Then they come into the 19th century. The Yeti was part of the pre-Buddhist beliefs of several Himalayan people. He was told that the legendary creature, the Lepcha people in particular, worshipped a glacier being as a god of the hunt. He also reported the followers of the Bon religion once believed the blood of the Mai Argog, or wild man, here it's described as wild man, had used in certain spiritual ceremonies. Being depicted as an ape-like creature who carries a large stone as a weapon and makes a whistling swoosh sound. The creature carries a large stone as a weapon. So here again we have the Yeti being described as a creature that carries rocks and uses rocks as a weapon. Probably to knock its prey on the head with when they catch up to it. Who knows? So here we have a pre-1900, like 1921 description here, for example, and of course it goes into the 1900s in written history. But you can, in Tibet, there are tribes, you can go back further apparently. From here in the 19th century, goes from the 1900s to present day 1900s. You see right here, and even it'll go back into 1832. Right here's another description of the northern Nepal Sasquatch. However, back then, this creature was touted off as orangutan, or an orangutan-like creature. Early report of reported footprints of the rock-throwing creature appeared in 1899. Unlike a lot of apes, this ape has a very humanoid but ape-like large footprint. Meaning, if you look at your foot, you have bones that go from the heel up to the toe part of the region of the foot. An ape has a hinge halfway down the foot, so there is a difference between a human foot and a Sasquatch foot. We've known that for a long time. It's one of the tall tale signs, right? So you can follow these creatures, their footprints, and everything we know about them through time. Here is a Yeti scalp. This is said to be a Yeti scalp. Said to be at the Kamjung Monastery. Now, my question is, how come they haven't taken the hair samples that they found in Russia or the Americas and compared them to the DNA on this scalp right here? My prediction is it's going to come out to be the exact same creature. Now, here's a doctor in 1954, Boswas, examining this so-called Yeti scalp. Called the Snowman Expedition of 1954. They had also supposedly collected some Yeti feces. Look at that. Yeti poop. It's collected by one of Slick's expeditions. Fecal analysis found a parasite which could not be classified. Wow. The parasite is actually in the mouth of that fish. So I believe we have a lot more physical evidence of this creature than has really been thought of in modern times. And we can move up here and look through all the DNA analysis that they say they have and things of this nature. Here's one piece of DNA evidence. This DNA evidence was attracted to the Himalayan region of the planet, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure that's pretty much a dominant area of these apes. It would be the Himalayan mountains in Tibet in particular. The Himalayas also known for a red bear that exists there, which could be misconstrued at a distance as one of these large ape-like creatures, or even the brown bear that they have there. So because these things exist, people like to attribute things like Bigfoot off as fairy tale. They don't really exist. Bigfoot hunters detect signs of the hairy beast in Siberia. And that puts us on a direct trail to the United States of America, where these ape-like creatures simply followed humans across from Russia to Alaska and into the Americas. In a darkened cave in Russia, there were some samples taken, thin fragments from a muddy footprint. This person found some hair, some real hair. He said, pulling these strands apart, and there are more. Maybe it was a girl, a female ape, quite possible. Now, if there's sightings of these creatures in this part of Russia, where are we talking about? Just like I said, not far north of where the ape is from. Look at that. Could easily follow the mountains. It's in the mountainous area that would lay the trail down towards these apes, not only going into just the southern part of Russia, but high up into Russia. You see the mountainous terrain? All the way up, all the way up, and over to Alaska, which is now the United States territory. Back then, it was still claimed as Russia. There were reports of Russia doing an experiment to create ape-like creatures as soldiers, to crossbreed humans with apes. Let me explain that off to you. It's quite simple. Some Americans that had encountered these apes in Russia got up to our White House, who then questioned the then leader of Russia about such a thing. And of course, the Russian leader just running off with it. Same thing he did in World War II when Hitler mistaken that Russia was not working on a large tank like the Tiger tank, but neither was Germany, even though Germany had already started building and producing these tanks, and so was Russia. So a lot of times when your enemy made the mistake of making a presumption in your direction, the Russian leader's tactic was quite normal. Just run with it. If your enemy believes it, all the better, especially if it ain't true. And there are reports of somebody having one of these ape-like creatures that ran in Russia that could outrun a horse. You can actually Google that on Google. It was not a woman, could outrun a horse. It was an ape. Imagine that. So somebody at some point in time had friended the ape enough to keep it captive and to coax it into running a race against a horse. Could you imagine an ape that can outrun a horse? That's scary. I don't know if you've ever seen a tiger on the hunt, but they come out of nowhere and they're very fast. If you have a rifle, you're very hard pressed to get a shot off at this creature because, first of all, it's going to frighten the hell out of you. And if you turn your gun even right away, the creature could already be on you. They're that fast. If we have an ape that is a rock throwing ape that is that huge and that fast, it explains why they are so dominant when attacking campers or people in the mountains who have invaded their space where they keep their family and their young ones. They're obviously a very territorial creature. And I submit to you that they do exist, but that they are only an ape, a very unknown ape. There's a lot that's not known about them. But I submit again, there's a lot that is known about them. Probably as much as we know about any ape. Don't let you ponder the question, do they exist or not? Well, with me, it's absolute yes, they do exist. And due to their surroundings dictates the size of the creature. In Russia, they are said to get as tall as 12 feet tall. In the Americas, they're said to get as big as about 10 feet tall on average. So it makes sense that down in Indonesia, they were said to be 5 feet tall, while in Vietnam and Tibet areas, they're said to be 6 feet tall, some even taller. And if you follow the rock throwing creature up into Russia, you will see the height in southern Russia of these creatures getting taller. Same exact creature, but instead of 6 feet tall, you see them as 8 to 10 feet tall until they get into northern Russia to where they're said to be 12 feet tall. So for us to have a creature like that in America that's 10 feet tall is highly probable, not improbable. So if you're wondering if Bigfoot does exist, I'm telling you that it does exist, but it's just an ape. And if you feed it, it probably won't hurt you, but I wouldn't put that to the test. So till the next go around, folks, with Trumpster Bob, God bless and peace out.